So we are now moving on to the panel discussion, and I'd like to invite back our speakers, Mr. Terence Teo, Mr. Colin Ko, Ms. Ada Lim, and Dr. Henrik Hesse. I am your moderator. My name is Elle, and I am a council member of APARA and also co-founder of MedHive, an AI-powered healthcare startup. So I'd like to request everyone to kindly unmute those on our panel, and this is your chance, ladies and gentlemen, to send in your questions using the chat function of VooV. We have a panel of experts with decades of experience with us, and don't miss your chance to pick on their brains and ask their insights on edge computing. So I'd like to start off with a question to Colin. So everyone's heard what all our speakers are doing and what they've been involved in. So I'll jump right in. Colin, could you share with our audience, who are maybe a mix of technologists, business, from academia, from government, what is a good understanding of intelligent edge devices?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think in my experience is we have been working with a lot of the industry partners. For the last 20, 30 years, we've been selling a lot of components, sensors, things like that. Basically, I think they are using very primitive in terms of the intelligence. I give example. Until now, still people are using this programmable logic controller. So programmable logic controller is a very simple logic control that allow you to do a lot of automation stuff. Nevertheless, I think it's very important, even like this kind of simple logic controller. The reason is they are able to do it very fast. I give examples. The latest types of the programmable logic controller that are being used in the factory, they are able to have a cycle times up to even less than 5 milliseconds, right? Just imagine that you need to process maybe 1,000 or even 2,000, 3,000 tech, but you're able to respond within 5 milliseconds or even less. But they are not intelligent, but they are able to do a very good job. So this is why I think the programmable control will be still using. But we see the trend is people want to extract some of these real-time data to understand the insight. So as I presented before, for instance, a very simple task like maintenance. Currently, people are still using preventive maintenance or even reactive maintenance, but that's the worst case. But they understand that by understanding the data they are able to capture from the machines or even the sensor they deploy, they are able to get insight, right? And how to do it in a way that either they can collect some of this data, right, and using maybe a low-cost edge computing devices to extract some of this data and make sense out of it. So I think we see a breakthrough in terms of the processing, in terms of the miniaturizations, as well as the speed. For instance, in the past, I think you know that if you are using a hard drive to collect data, and you want to do an analysis, it's very difficult because hard drive is a mechanical device. But with the latest advancement and the low driving cost down of this solid state memory, you are able to do in-memory processing and very fast. And of course, you couple with the AI algorithms, you are able to mix all the existing investment, especially manufacturing plant, you're ranging from 10 millions or even billions of dollars. All these assets are doing their work, but you find there's still a lot of inefficiencies, right? For instance, I give you an example, like, for instance, you are not sure when the machine will break down, and that is a very big headache for a lot of manufacturers. So if we are able to deploy some of these so-called the edge computing with the AI and so-called very easy to use kind of algorithm, I think that will actually speed up and also improve a lot of these existing infrastructures, not only in the factory, but I think in a lot of these like smart city, things like a lot of healthcare, things like that. That will improve a lot of this productivity tremendously. So I think why we need to do that. So if you know that all the product we buy, you're paying a price. And the price, there's a cost. So this cost is actually generated by what? By a lot of wastage, a lot of rework, and sometimes you need to put a lot of overhead. So the product we buy now, some of these are very expensive. The reason is because manufacturing cost is very high. So if we are able to deploy some of this latest technology into the processes to improve the productivity, increase the so-called the quality control, things like that, I think that will benefit a lot of the user, right? So I'm looking from the cost perspective. Yeah, that's my view.
All right, thanks, Colin. You've touched a bit on this, but can we hear from Terence and weigh in on the advantages and disadvantages of processing at the edge versus cloud level?
So I'd like to discuss on the advantages and disadvantages of, the processing at the edge versus cloud level. As we know that nowadays, IoT has become very common, and there's an increase in the number of gateways and devices, and this will require more processing powers, and consequently, we also see a vast amount of data being generated on the outer edge of the computing networks. So traditionally, all this data is produced, they are actually relayed back to a central network server, which is a database server housed in the data center. So once the data is processed, further instructions are sent back to the edge device or to the devices out on the edge of the network. So for the user and operators, they basically get all these notification alerts and report from the cloud, which is actually a physical storage servers within the data center. So this actually has two problems within this setup. First is that it actually takes time for the data to send from the edge device back to the center for processing, and also depends on the connectivity, whether is it through cables, through the cellular bandwidth, or through any other communication platform. So this delay might only be a matter of let's say a few milliseconds, but it can be critical because secondly, the data will need to travel back and forth between the edge and the center of this network and put tremendous strains on the bandwidth. So this combination of the distance and the high volume traffic can slow the network down, and with this, it actually impact the entire setup. Especially with many devices that is connected within the same network. So network latency can have a very serious consequences for industrial IoT applications or even the AI applications. Take for example, I think a lot of speakers have shared regarding the autonomous vehicle. They actually gather a lot of data from their surroundings and from devices nearby. So if the vehicle reaction time is dependent on the instruction from the computing resource at the core of the network, and any slight delay could literally be a matter of life and death. So that is very critical. So edge computing actually offers a solution to this latency problem. So this is an advantage, because they are actually relocating the crucial data processing to the edge of the network rather than constantly delivering back and forth to a central server. So edge-enabled devices respond faster and more effectively. So when used in tandem with the edge data centers, the edge computing becomes a very versatile approach to the network infrastructure. And that is the advantage of the abundant processing powers afforded by combination of both the modern IoT device and edge data centers. The disadvantage of the edge versus the cloud is that, I mean, the edge basically comes from, is a hardware base. So in terms of a hardware base, there is still, I mean, a certain percentage of error that sometimes the hardware is not reliable. So when the hardware is not reliable, data cannot be processed, and basically it becomes a failure within the network or the systems. And also, I mean, if some of the algorithms are not efficient enough, or I mean, the soft part of the implementation, and that could also be an issue compared to the backend if the data are processed by the cloud, which usually have more core of CPU that can actually do the processing much faster, and also can take in more data in that application. So that covers the part that I want to share in terms of this advantages and disadvantages.
Thank you so much, Terence. We are starting to see some questions come in on the chat, but we'd like to invite everyone else who has questions that you'd like to address, ask the panelists. So let me just ask another question to Professor Henrik. Is Ada still around? Ada, I hope you can still join us.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So we'd like to hear from you and Professor Henrik. And if any other panelists have something to share, what are some of the other useful applications of edge computing? I know some have been shared earlier, but are there any other applications that you've seen or here are ready to be implemented that we should be excited about? Perhaps we start with Ada and then Henrik.
Sure, yeah. I think my opinion, it's like we will be going towards a day where machines will be controlling machines, so that we can have kind of like an autonomous system whereby one machine can communicate and give inputs to another, and and have a seamless kind of like a seamless cooperation among themselves, so that things can be a lot more efficient. Yeah, that's what I look forward to. Henry, any other opinions?
Yeah.
Any other
I think I can add to this. I mean, there are lots of interesting applications that we saw today already. I think all the talks actually gave a really good overview of what we can do. Right, it ranges from agriculture to underwater applications, all the way to the manufacturing floor. I think actually Colin would be a great expert to chip in on this, for the application and manufacturing. One aspect that I can see, and Silon touched upon this earlier, was autonomous driving. So it is something that is coming in Singapore as well. And when we're looking at the technology challenges in actually implementing autonomous driving in Singapore, for example, is how does a car actually detect danger that's coming up? So, for example, pedestrians just crossing the road out of the blue. So, of course, AV, autonomous vehicle developers looking at computer vision, trying to do, behavior analysis to see if a pedestrian just jumps out of nowhere. But actually, if you're thinking about a network of connected edge devices, we could even see that, you can have other devices, cameras and so on, detecting pedestrian flow and communicating this through autonomous vehicles. So this is a really exciting application, for example, where we have not just edge devices, but actually lots of edge devices talking to each other. I think that's what I can think of. We have another one. I think Ada already mentioned this. It's healthcare, right? Where we can probably see a lot more potential for edge devices talking together. So, for example, in the whole hospital environment, and for sure, it's the feedback that we receive is in the manufacturing sector. I think there's a lot of potential there, but of course we need to see what are the potential pitfalls as well. And Colin mentioned this earlier. Is one big aspect is cybersecurity, and that's the same feedback that I get talking to manufacturing companies. Is actually how to make sure that the data stays inside that factory warehouse. And actually, edge computing is a good answer to that one, to make sure that none of the data leaks out.
All right. Henry, you mentioned healthcare. Sorry, you mentioned healthcare.
Sorry, I thought I would just add on to what Henrik said about the healthcare. Yeah, so I think in my personal opinion, my hope is that it wouldn't come to a day where all this data collected, it's not used against a specific kind of person for like discrimination. Like someone was asking, what about ethics? Are we going to use data to say that hey, you are from a certain kind of ethnic background, you are from a certain kind of skin color, you are predisposition for certain kind of diseases, and thus you'll be denied treatment for something, like etc. I hope we don't have such things where we have a discrimination occurring because of the data collected from these edge devices. Yeah.
Yeah, we hope everything works for our good. I was actually going to ask if anyone has any experience or know of news that how specifically this is being used in the battle against COVID, since everyone, the entire world is now looking at this as well. Have you heard of any specific case studies, user studies on how edge computing has impacted healthcare?
I think it's more a case, that I know is technology companies using computer vision AI to actually see if, let's say, the measures against, COVID, the virus spreading, are implemented. So, of course, we see a very fast turnaround in solutions popping up where, companies developing computer vision algorithms, for example, to ensure that people, comply with the social distancing or the number of people waiting for an elevator. And these sort of things. So for sure, we see there's a development, and it's again what Colin said is actually, Terence, it's so easy nowadays to get into edge computing, to develop smart devices, that we can see that within a day actually a company can develop something like this. And we see this from our point of view is we teach our undergraduate students how to use edge devices to basically do some sort of automated intelligence. We see how simple it is actually nowadays. So there's a huge potential.
That's good to hear. So I would like to pose the last question. Are there any questions on the chat that we should be looking at? I think I need Oliver's help on this. Is there anything, Oliver, you'd like to highlight from our chat that we should be asking our panelists?
Yeah, I think there are a number of questions raised around ethics, and that's actually a very good topic and probably needs some elaborate time. In fact, I'll encourage the current audience to join us in 2 weeks' time where we can talk a bit more in depth around the different perspectives of ethics in the application of AI responsible technology. Lots is happening around the world. So do join us at the next webinar where that will go into detail. But for now, perhaps we can just look at wrapping up the session as we're running close to 4 p.m. now. So I'm not sure if I'll pass it back to you to see how we can wrap this up.
Okay, can we just request for a short 1 minute parting words from our panelists? And how do you see edge computing actually? So let's take it from, shall we start with Colin first?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, if you know that the global GDP, the manufacturing actually occupied 20%, so it's a very large portion of the world economy. So the industry 4.0 is talking very focused on the cyber physical. So the cyber physical in a way that you had a physical product and the processors on the floor. At the same time, you want to virtualize them. So virtualization, you need to actually rely a lot on cloud, right? So I would say that the cloud and the edge computing will do their own work. The issue is how to optimize these two technology in a way that to achieve what we want at the same time at a minimum cost. And of course, the security is one of the big issues. So if you look at moving forward, the 5G is coming on board. So of course, people are talking about quantum computing, right? So quantum computing at this moment are still at a very low level. Like for instance, now you're able to use quantum computing from IBM cloud, right? I think it's about 14 qubit to do some processing. But I think there are two areas of the quantum technology is that they already developed the quantum sensors as well as the quantum communication. These are two basically will be come on board soon. So with the 5G, with the edge computing, with the cloud and AI and all these emerging technologies, we see actually the human being should be able to leverage on all this technology, right? To have a better life in terms of, or even a better product quality with a lower cost, better safety, better securities, healthcare, of course. So that will actually drive a lot of this unnecessary costs. So if we are able to leverage on all these emerging technologies, so the conversion is very important. How you converge all this technology to achieve your respective goal and objective, I think this is something that human have to come into place. Because human is still the most intelligent, so-called, in the world. So of course now you keep on saying that artificial intelligence. That's to say that all the intelligence you develop actually is artificial. You still need human being to come to decide when certain issues are not able to decide by the computer. And of course, I think Oliver will talk a lot in future, maybe about the AI, in terms of ethics and how to solve this problem, whether it's something like a black box in the aeroplane. When something happens, you are able to know who's wrong, who's right, things like that. So it's a big topic, but it's interesting. Yeah, I think I see the future is bright for everybody if all this technology can be put into the right place.
That's great. The future is bright. So let's hear from Terence.
Okay, ISPs and CSPs are looking for new revenue stream to grow their business, especially in the enterprise area, which will be increasingly important in the future. So of course, with 5G, which can support higher data transmission rate, edge computing definitely will be in a pole position to support the AI and the industrial IoT applications. We know that there is a lot of the amount of data being generated from all this adoption is tremendous. So there is a fear of bottleneck that has motivated the tech industries to unleash massive infrastructures campaigning, running in parallel to the IGs to roll out. Especially a lot of the edge computing will be getting closer to where it has been used. So of course, market research by IDC actually defined that the edge computing market, which barely existed a couple of years ago, will be worth 34 billion by 2023. So this will include the hardware, software, and components that need to create a vast number of processing systems that will complement the larger data centers located far away. So this edge computing system must be able to filter out data, deciding on what to keep locally and what to send up into the cloud, and analyze the information in milliseconds to deliver the promise. And of course, the final result will be to come out to be a real-time automation systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Terence. And Ada, could you share with us your parting words and insights?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, very interesting. So to me, I think, it's like with all the advancements of technologies and all that, we are getting more connected, and then we are able to do more. And what I hope is that, with the technology, I hope we don't lose the human touch. Like what Colin mentioned, we are the smartest and most intelligent people and creatures in this whole world. And we hope that we still remain our human touch. Remember to connect with people in real life, spend time with our families, because these devices and technologies are supposed to free us time to spend more time and energy with our families, friends, and making real connections. And I hope that these devices don't keep us more busy, glued to the screens and glued to the devices. Yeah, that's my hope for the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Ada. That's a great takeaway. Don't lose the human touch. And finally, but not the least, Henrik.
Thank you. Yeah, very much agree with Ada, actually. There's no point for all these devices to speed up our lives just to be more stressed afterwards. I mean, yeah, after all these great summaries, what can I say? I think what I mentioned in my talk already, the future that I see in edge devices is for me actually a potential to play around with, and that's the university point of view, right? Is we're having fun, and we actually see how far we can stretch this technology. So for sure, I see a future of lots of interconnected devices. And as I said in my talk, I hope that actually ROS can play a role in this, definitely in the manufacturing sector, where we have lots of robots interconnected. And then, yeah, I guess we see, I mean, what Colin said in his talk, right? We have moves of centralization and decentralization. I guess we can just see what 5G will bring. And it's always a bit, the question of what are the challenges that I guess industry or civilization is throwing at us, right? And then we respond with the technology that is right. Would be to see the potential of edge computing versus cloud computing.
Okay. Thank you, Henrik. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank all our speakers really sincerely on behalf of APARA, on behalf of the whole AIBotics team. Thank you for joining us this afternoon and sharing your experiences and insights. And all right, so there has been a lot of mention on don't lose the human touch. So I guess that is one of the important things that we will also be talking about at our next webinar, which is on ethical and responsible AI. So don't miss that. We are having this on the 17th of September. You can register at the AIBotics.tech website so that you would not miss out on our discussion on this next seminar. With that, I'd like to bring the webinar to a close, but before I let everyone out, can you please help us to fill up the survey that we have prepared? So your inputs will help us make a better webinar, create better and more relevant content. So please do give us your feedback. There's a QR code there that you can check out before you go. So if I'm not missing anything, Oliver, would you like to say thank you as well to everyone?
Sure. Right. Thanks, everyone. It's great to have you join us for this third webinar. And as we now end this session, once again, I'd like to join Elle in thanking all the speakers for your time and great insights into the discussion. So I look forward to seeing you next week, 2 weeks later, I beg your pardon, where we will look at the whole discussion on ethical and responsible AI. We will have very interesting discussions from folks from different organizations, and particularly, maybe to let the cat out of the bag a little bit, we will be looking at a topic around AI audits. So with that, thank you very much, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.